tonight. And there's
Yeah,
our
we
friend George. And Sydney is back. That's great. And Kenny. That's great. Okay. So yeah, go for it, Greg.
All right. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome back to the Thursday Conversation series. And just glad to have all of you here. Welcome to the month of February. Welcome to Black History Month and all the wonderful things that we have in store for this month. And tonight we have another guest speaker that we're very proud to present to you, and it's Salem City Councilman Jose Gonzalez. Councilman Gonzalez he's deeply rooted in Oregon, especially Marion County and the Mount Angel area and the Salem area. He's a newly elected councilman with the City of Salem government, and he is responsible for Ward number 5. And we are just thrilled and tickled to have connected with him last year, late, and he wanted to participate in the work that we're doing, and we have him here to present tonight. He's a local businessman in addition to his political work, and I think you're going to enjoy what he has to say. So, Councilman Gonzalez.
That has a nice ring to it.
It sure does. Happy to have you here. Welcome.
Greg, thank you. Awesome to see everybody here. I've actually pretty much seen all the videos, all the conversations you've had. I've seen the information. I've heard your comments, your concerns. I've been listening. I've been paying attention. And believe me, I think the very first time Lori brought this up, she says, Jose, there's only 10, 15 of us. But as someone like me that have had talks like this, maybe 100 times in the last X amount of years, that adds up. So these conversations are important. Every single conversation like this matters. And I'm going to give you guys some examples where literally it's been a few people in my life that have changed things, right? The trajectory of our life. So I'm going to talk about that because the one thing that I did want to bring is I actually want to bring you, I would say, some real examples, right? Now, usually people at this point start by telling you what they are, who they are, right? But I'm not. I'm going to tell you all the things I'm not. Not a teacher. I'm not a college degree holder. Not a lecturer, not a speaker, not poor, not rich, not a victim, and I'm not oppressed. So here comes the first question to you. I want to hear your thoughts just on what I said. And I'll leave it open to anybody that wants to talk. And these thoughts are really important to the rest of the conversation because it's going to be a back and forth. It isn't going to be just me talking. So any initial thoughts, just lay them out.
And all of you are muted if you'd like to unmute so that you can toss a thought to Jose. That would be great.
I have a question. I wonder why you describe yourself as not oppressed.
I want to hear comments first, and then let me get some thoughts and comments.
I was struck with just how different that introduction was. That to start off with saying so candidly what I'm not. It's actually, I find it refreshing, and I cued into what you were going to say much more intentionally than I would have otherwise. I didn't expect it.
Same here, Greg.
Well, I think the typical political thing is here, this is what I have, what I can offer, what I am all about, and this is why you should vote for me. That's kind of a typical, you could just use that from speech to speech. So yeah, that was different, Jose. Yeah.
I'll withhold my judgment on whether or not you're a speaker. So far, you sound pretty good.
So what I gathered from that is that too many times we identify with those titles that you called out as saying, I'm poor, I'm college educated, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. And I think when we tend to identify with those things, they tend to hold us back from being who we're supposed to be.
I think it sounds to me like you're probably a hard worker. You have a lot of perseverance. You don't let things stop you when they get in your way, and you try and figure out a way to get around them. Um, I think you probably don't waste a lot of time.
Jose, how old are you?
I'm 45. 45 years young, I guess.
Yeah.
I think Yvette nailed it.
I
And with her comment about you're not labeling yourself. And it's like Greg said, that was so refreshing.
you know, and that just occurred to me just earlier today to sort of start like that. And if I couldn't have said it better. I hadn't even thought that far. You know, I'm just looking at it. I'm trying to share a message. That way, as you see me and maybe others like me, you know, you start from with no assumptions. I think that's what the opportunity is. So now I tell you this now, and going back to Galen, I think Galen, is that? I tell you this even after my family and I have experienced every racist thing you could imagine, pretty much, right? Parents were deported twice. Immigration had roadblocks in Woodburn in the early 80s on 99E. That luckily we had the minority broadcast system where my uncles called my uncles and told my parents to avoid it. We didn't fall prey to that. Me personally, I've been pulled over 60 times from the first day I drove to about 30. You know, a couple speeding tickets, so I'm not 100% innocent. So our family being followed at stores because they thought we were stealing. One of my first earliest memories was in Woodburn, a grocery store. My treat was just to go look at the cereal boxes. We couldn't afford those, but I could just go look at them, right? And I am sitting there, maybe I'm standing there, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, my hands in my pocket, and one of the clerks, she just yanks my hand out and says, "What do I have in there?" And my poor mom trying to fight back in Spanish. It was just, I'll never forget that. Teachers thinking I'm a cheater, right? Because I'm in calculus. Nobody's helping me. The other kids are helping themselves as a team. But why am I getting good grades in calculus and trigonometry, all in high school? Why am I the best in French? The students actually went to the teacher and said, why is she giving me the better grades? Because there's no way I was that smart. My brother, actually, let me go back. My sisters were bullied so bad. I don't know if it was Mount Angel School District or the Woodburn School District, bullied so bad. Now, we're cut from a different cloth. So my sisters fought back and beat them up so bad they were expelled. That was after constant bullying. My brother in high school in the North Marion School District, the Hubbard area, one day, his first day in high school, was bullied so bad he quit, never went back to school for the rest of his life. Right? So believe me, there's been a lot of situations that I can point to, right, to use those labels easily, but I'm not. And you'll sort of see why it is I'm even here in front of you. That's a privilege. Now, I think one of the things that I can point to that changed our family or our perspective or the way we see things is my mom's stories. My mom told us everything about herself growing up in Mexico. I mean, the stories that she shared, you couldn't even think of a movie that, the things she experienced herself personally, her family, her community. You know, she had no choice but one of the things she did mention is, Jose, I'd be like, why? What do you mean a border? What do you mean country? She goes, Jose, look, under God, this land is ours. People create these things, right? But we're above it. We're above it. It's just there's these things that are created. But so what she was, so when I'm thinking of things on a global scale. I'm thinking, when I think of poverty, I think of what I saw in Mexico City, right? My cousins. I'm thinking of things that are, I don't know, maybe we take things for granted here, right? So all that encourages me just to push forward, because it's not, we all say it could be worse. Well, I've seen our family as a result of what's been worse, so I would say a lot of what my whole life, and it really took all these last years of reflecting to sort of see it, realize that that's how I've been looking at it, that because of all this pain, because we were at negative for so long, that anything out of that was positive, right? So switching gears, one of the heading for today is cultural appropriation, and I'm going to share some thoughts about it. And maybe through these stories, examples that I'm going to give you, you'll sort of see that me personally, I've had to sort of move in and out of different cultures. We were farm workers. I'm a first generation Mexican American, born here though. I was born in Oregon, lived in the Valley my whole life. The way I've had to navigate my career as a young bilingual Latino professional for the last 25 years here in Salem, small business owner, volunteering, just that was a challenge. So and then now elected office, and even the race to get there, man, that's a story in itself that still the story is still being written, let's put it that way. And I would say one of the things I noticed about this cultural appropriation, right, is that when we were younger, we were invisible. We were farm workers, we were Spanish speakers, we were invisible, right? So at that time, what you wanted was acknowledgement, right? At late 80s, somewhere in the 90s, our families are starting to be acknowledged in the Valley. But after that, you realize what's nice that you're acknowledged, but you're not appreciated, right? And then one day someone appreciates you for the hard work. Someone mentioned hard work. So at some point, someone's like, wow, hard workers, right? But then what happens is, and it's funny how for me, it happened in these steps, but then after that, it's not just as an individual, but as a collective, as a culture, you start to realize, well, wait a minute, you need to acknowledge the culture because of the way we're trying to integrate our life in this country, right? And then once I acknowledge it, same thing, we want to see it be appreciated. So first it's we're craving acknowledgement, then we're craving appreciation as a person, and then as a culture, and then we want to be appreciated for that culture. That's why this term of, there's no such thing as being colorblind, But then what happens with the appropriation is the same things that that were held against us, others are using to make money. So there's a weird line, because for us, for example, the most obvious example is you go to a Mexican restaurant, it's your birthday. What do? They slap the sombrero on you and they start singing happy birthday with some guy with the guitar, right? So that's what a lot of the Mexican restaurants did for fun, right? And it was okay, but now it looks a little weird when it's Cinco de Mayo, people are drinking margaritas, drinking with sombreros, and now it's like, well, wait a minute, it's a strange feeling. The number, and then also actually, before I go to my next point, what was a little even more unique for me is that my family comes from Mexico City. My family has no connection to sombreros, has no connection to us riding on donkeys. Like, that's not where my family's from. It's from the biggest city in the world. So growing up, I remember in 3rd grade, I was reading a book about something in Spanish, and my teacher goes, siestas. Jose, you guys take siestas, right? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I just said yes. And I go home and I'm like, Mom, why don't we take siestas? She's like, what, a siesta? I'm like, yeah, nap. Nobody takes. That's something from Spain, maybe. So it was a really interesting thing being labeled outside. In other words, we weren't labeling ourselves. The community was labeling us. And then we had to navigate that. But the best example, to me, I think the best example about cultural appropriation is the Bo Derek story. Does everybody know that story? Anybody know? the Bo Derek, the hair, that right there. I mean, man, I don't know if you, let me see how much time I don't want to take up too much time, because if not, we'll go all night. But it goes back to her, and maybe that's what I'll give you guys some homework. Just go back to that story of her in that movie called The Perfect 10, and what that spun off, the way she wore her hair, and the way it was, just like I said, something that had been mocked by Black women and their hairstyle that they lived every single day for generations, and then held again, it's held against them. But then here comes Bo Derek, and now they're charging $300 to $500 for that hairstyle in the 70s. So that, right? I mean, so there's plenty of examples, and those are the kind of things that we notice in our lives that are sometimes, it's never perfect, because believe me, at first when I was little and I saw Speedy Gonzalez in those cartoons, I thought, awesome, he has my name. I finally saw, even though it was a little mouse, up to no good, mischievous. Now I see it and I just like, his uncle's drunk, his uncle's lazy, like all these funny little things. But when I was little, we were craving something, so those are my remarks, just my opening remarks. The rest of this talk, I'm going to break into 3 segments. Any thoughts before, any other thoughts before we go forward? That way, if anybody has something they want to get off their chest, we can do it real quick.
Yeah,
Any
if
thoughts?
you have anything to say, please unmute yourself. And
Yeah.
Just wondering, did you speak Spanish mostly or English or a little bit of both?
I only knew Spanish, and I learned English in kindergarten, in a special class in kindergarten, and now I have to relearn my Spanish.
I think, Jose, your comment on the labels, that really resonated with me, because it's interesting in our society today, that's what we mostly vote for, labels. And sometimes, we label people, but also there are times when we invent our own label, and that's what we try to sell in a campaign.
So if unless there's somebody, any other thoughts? Oh, Bobby. Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to go back to the question that was given to you earlier about your comment that you said you're unoppressed. I think that was the word, unoppressed. And then in explaining, you talked about how you had been resilient from so much racism. And is that what you meant by when you gave yourself the label unoppressed? Is that your resiliency through this all?
Exactly. I think for me, it was about my outlook. Right.
Okay, then I'm sorry. Then the follow-up would be, do you believe in that there is systemic racism?
There's for me, the way I look at life, right, and the way I see things, not just at the US level or the Oregon level, the stories that my parents shared are global. And you'll realize that, I don't know if there is a perfect place. There will always be the power against the powerless. But the difference is, and it's not that I don't believe in systematic race, all these terms, right? I'm glad that someone found a word for them, right? But actually what I saw is I felt that I was above all that. I felt smarter than my teachers. I felt smarter than my colleagues that only have experience to one culture, right? I never saw something I couldn't overcome. If I saw a wall, I knew I could climb it, right? So that's how I always saw things, right? Because then what happens is, if I give that power to the system, then they won. And I will never do that. I'm always take my responsibility for what I'm going to do and what my goals are. And if I fail, I'm taking it I'm taking it as my responsibility, because when it's my last dying days, Galen, I don't want to blame anybody. That's the only reason. Whether it's true or not, that's why I mentioned that these things have really happened. I can give you a whole lot of examples of where there's things in place, and you'll hear some of these stories. But you're also going to hear how, to me, there were no walls sometimes. Because the wall's there, I'm like, well, I'll go this way, right? And what I've had to create is a system in itself. You'll see after we're done that in a way, my family, myself, people around us helped me create our own ecosystem. I didn't have to depend on outside help because I got enough help from enough people to accomplish what we needed to. And it has been hard. I know it's harder. I know it's twice as hard for someone like me, but man, I don't know, maybe I like a challenge.
Jose, before you go on, one of our attendees who is participating by phone would like to ask a question. Carol, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm not on the phone. I'm just not visible. My question is, you said that when you saw a wall, you knew there was a way you could get over it. And that analogy that metaphor makes sense to me. My question is, when you were growing up or now as an adult, could you briefly share someone not giving us their name, but somebody who whose circumstances don't have just one wall, but have a series of walls or 4 walls, surrounded by not literal, barbed wire, no ladders. In your culture, your family's culture, how do you collaborate so that person isn't stuck inside all of the barriers? And I'm thinking disabilities and poverty and illness and racism and any other barriers. What's in your family's background that helps others get past their problems?
And that's a perfect. It's almost. Let me do this next section and see if maybe it answers it a little bit, right? Because one of the things, some of these things take time. So something that I've come to believe now, because I look back, right, and there's been these real pivotal moments in my life. So I like to call it the 1 degree change, because right now it's just 1 degree, but with time, you can look back and say, wow, that was real change. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about might be what answers your question, because I can give you examples of people I know around me that have everything against them, right? And they're succeeding in this country. They're succeeding in this system, right? So it's real. There's a system in place. It's here because it's us people, right? But all it takes is a few people to open some doors to what they've been privileged to have, for example, if this is the language we're going to use, right? And then it's up to us to walk through that door, right? So I'm going to tell you stories. I'm talking 40 years, right? I couldn't have told these stories a couple years ago, 10 years ago, right? So these stories will always be changing. But going back to my mom, so as I'm hearing her stories, why she left that country, you can see in her, it wasn't just the words I was paying attention to. It was the pain, the sorrow, her submissive, the way she is, and you can just, you can see where that pain was coming from. You could just, I didn't experience what she did. There's no way. I'm just an observer. But I knew my mom well enough to know that what she was experiencing was just everything you could think of, sexual, sexual predators, income. I mean, just like I told you, just my mom's story is like a movie that you wouldn't want to see if you wanted to smile at the end of it, Luckily, we still have her. She's here in Kaiser, right? So I'm able to bounce things back from her. I'm lucky I can have that. So a lot of these stories, I actually went back to talk to my parents. But now let me tell you something as far as, let me give you some examples. What she instilled in us, right? She gave us and our family a sense of pride. We felt we weren't alone. And everything we had, we were grateful for, everything, right? So we never took anything for granted. And in my mind, growing up, I never felt poor. I just never felt that. Even though statistically, we're in poverty, right? So much though, that when I got to school, and the very first time I heard my teacher say, Jose, you can't speak Spanish, don't do that. I thought to myself, you know what I thought of? I must have been like in 3rd grade, 4th. And I was speaking Spanish to some of the Latino friends that were around, and they didn't want to speak it, but the teacher heard me and she was like, you know what I thought to myself? I didn't say this. This is exactly what I can hear it. I can hear my mind that moment when she told me that. I literally said to myself, wait, are you crazy? I know that 2 languages is better than 1. So you're wrong. In my mind, I knew my teacher was wrong, right? Just to give you an example, how I've sort of lived my life, right? The very first time, and I knew that because the very first time, I still remember the first time I interpreted for somebody other than my family. To me, it was normal to handle all the language issues for my parents. It was normal. Everywhere we went, doctor's appointments, documents, you name it, even reading how to put a VCR together. I mean, it was me. I was the one that had to do all those things. And I remember that it was in Woodburn, a grocery store. We were at the checkout line. I interpreted for my parents. And then there was these 2 Mexican guys. They go up to my parents and I heard them. They're like, excuse me, but can we borrow your son for just a minute? Because we have this issue, right? My parents gave them permission. They came up to me and I helped them. There was something they were asking about a product. I interpreted. And then afterwards, I saw the way they reacted to they went back to my parents and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. So helpful. Thank you so much for giving it. And I was like, there's value. There's some kind of value here in what I just did, right? So that's why it was easy for me to go back to thinking how my teacher was telling me it was easier for me to see the falseness in that conversation, right? I saw my value. But let me ask this to the group, because maybe the experiences were different, but how did you respond when you knew your teacher said something you didn't agree with, or you knew they were wrong, or you realized they didn't know enough? How did people here respond through school? And then why? I'm curious because I want to learn. I want to learn.
That's an interesting question, Jose, because I've always valued authority, and I don't think I would have dared said anything to a teacher. But you didn't, of course, you thought it, but I always thought that what they were teaching or telling me was the absolute truth.
But Lori, knowing you enough, that was true in elementary school.
Right.
It changed with age and time.
Yes.
So at one point in your life, you asked lots of questions of everybody.
Yes.
So for many of us, our life scripts have something to do with what we do at an elementary age versus a middle school or high school or young adult or college or young career or middle career or old career or retired or whatever. For many of us, how we challenge is based on our own knowledge of ourself, what we feel secure in challenging. Is Jose, is that, I mean,
Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I felt so strongly. I mean, have you ever seen The Water Boy? You know, where there was a funny scene where his mom wouldn't let him go to school, so she was his teacher, and he would just say some funny things. Well, Mama said, which weren't true, you know. And you know, so there's that where maybe I'm holding on to something false, but what I was holding on to felt real. I had seen it because I had seen my parents struggle in this world, in this Willamette Valley. I see them. I saw people's reaction to them. Sometimes I would hear things that I was supposed to interpret, but I wouldn't tell them the truth because the things were hurtful. So I would adjust it, right, to protect them. And imagine that's 7, 8-year-old nine's job. It's not my job to protect my parents, but we had to, right? Any other thoughts about teachers? Because I think, Lori, that's sort of what I wanted to hear. That, I mean, maybe that's how it is for most. Go ahead, Robert.
Do you know if the context of what your teacher was saying was because you were not supposed to speak Spanish in the classroom because, well, a little story of my own. I was in San Francisco, and I was in an elevator with a janitor. He was showing me around the hospital, and there were two Spanish-speaking nurses in the elevator, and they were speaking to each other in Spanish. And he said that they were not allowed to speak Spanish in front of other people because he said it was rude. Now, I don't think it was rude for you to speak Spanish to the other kids, but do you think it might have been because the teacher didn't speak Spanish and she didn't know what was being said?
Exactly. I want to say that's 100% the reason why. And now this is, I'm 3 years old, so I'm trying to process it. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, in school, they teach you. This is follow your dreams, your passions, be you. What do you know, like they're trying to take out, right? Especially at that level, positivity, you know, they're trying to encourage you. And this is the first time I didn't feel that from my teacher, because my response, I was like, why not? Because I actually went, but I asked, why? And then it was something about that it's not allowed here. And it wasn't like I was speaking in front of class. It was just him having a side conversation. It was just us in the corner talking, you know? So it wasn't like I was quiet. So I didn't really speak up much in class. So I think it was that moment that I'm like, well, why is this now something I shouldn't do? When everything here is learn and experience as much as you can, you know, like, you know, you don't want to. And so that's why, Robert, I agree with you. It's that moment. But me as a younger one, I'm like, why would this be the thing that she grabs onto and would put a stop to? Yvette, please.
Thank you. So I understand this topic is about culture appropriation. Am I correct? So a thing that came up to me as you were speaking, especially with regard to trying to silence your culture, if I could say it like that, when you were a younger person. And the thing that came to mind was, and I had to look it up to make sure I was on the same wavelength that was going through my head was cultural assimilation, which is the process by which a person or a group of languages or cultures come to resemble that of another. And I think that sometimes when we think about cultural appropriation, we should also use that word assimilation, because it's easier for people when they don't understand another culture to try to silence that culture and say that you're like, you hear people say, you're in America, speak, as I've heard, American. Push who you are aside and do like everyone else. And being that we talk about this is Black History Month, well, I don't need a month just to celebrate who I am. I celebrate who I am all year, because I know there's a Spanish historical month or heritage month that comes around as well. And we take these times to identify and look at other people's culture. But once that month is over, we kind of like, okay, that's enough of you. Now you act like the rest of us. And I think that we have to get past the part where we're telling people to put aside who you are, which is a big portion of your life and your very well-being. It's your history, it's your heritage, to be like everyone else. And I think it's a disservice when you think about it in that regard, because we need people that don't look like us to push agenda of unity and wholeness.
Yvette, you put into words how I felt. I think that's, because let me give you another couple examples, Robert. When in school, they didn't even people don't believe me, but a lot of my teachers couldn't say Jose. They saw Jose and they didn't know what that meant. They didn't know how to read it, right? Mm-hmm. So the constant pressure I got growing up was, call yourself Joe, Joey, Joseph. And I said, no. I never let them change my name, right? Because my mom named me that for a reason. And this is little man fighting back. Like, no, right? So I never let that happen. And I think that's what it is. It's to make it easier for somebody else, you need to change. And I never did. I mean, I don't know what I am, to tell you the truth. What am I, right? And I realized I'm just me, right? And that's why some of these examples, it's an example within a story. But let me tell you guys two quick stories that were that 1 degree change for my family. And because I'm trying to give you guys tools that you can use to take action. It feels like some of you want to take action. So here's some examples. So when we were younger, we were farm workers only. And then my sisters got into work in some canneries. This was in Aurora, Oregon bulb farm, B-U-L-B, bulb farm. They used to ship bulbs all over the world, And it was dirty work. I mean, the trucks would come in and dump all this stuff and you'd be dusty. And now the mask we're wearing today, that's what we wore. But we'd be all dirty, except for just the mask, Now, my sisters worked there. I don't know how long, but they realized, wait a minute, these girls are bilingual. This would have been 82, right? 83, 84, somewhere in there. And so they convinced one of my sisters, my oldest sister, why don't you come inside the office, right? Because there's nobody bilingual and there's a lot of more Spanish speaking people. So my sister went from one day to the next as someone dressed in leftover clothes, dirty hair in a bun, hat, and the next day, she's wearing a short skirt, her high heels, she fixed up her hair. And then her attitude changed, right? Now, and she loved that office culture. Today, my sister, Leticia, she's been working with the same attorney for 30 years, offering bilingual services in Portland. Thousands of people she's helped, Now, my other sister was also pulled into the office, but she didn't like offices. So Teresa, she got out of the office setting and she's been working in warehouses, driving forklifts. That wasn't for her. Now, for me, I saw, we have options. We can be on this side or on that side. And that's something that I would say that little change, that opportunity, the person that gave my sister Leticia that door, that option, it changed my life. Now, the next story is something that really took 15 years for me to even notice it be a story. So I was born in Oregon, right? Born here. If we had extra money, we'd go to the mall as youngsters, as teenagers, right? But I remember this one day, it was a beautiful, with my cousins, it was a beautiful weekend, the perfect summer, Oregon summer day, just perfect. And so we were going to go to the mall because that's where the action was, right? And we get to the mall and it's dead. My cousins and I and my brother, we couldn't believe why was it so empty on this beautiful Oregon day, right? We didn't understand the Oregon wildlife outdoor culture, zero. Never really visited a park. If we did, it's just a barbecue. I didn't camp until I was 20 something. But my brother had a friend named Matt, okay? This was after at his job. He was 20. Now Matt, if I could describe him to you. Matt was an American white guy. He was skinny, thin. He was an ex-skateboarder, right? He used words like far out, rad. You know, he loved tiki, anything, you know, so he was always talking about these themes, right? But his real passion was jet skiing, right? That was his life. So he kept telling my brother, you need to get a jet ski. You need to get a jet ski. I didn't realize he had persisted. He had bugged him for so long. Well, anyways, one day my brother calls me and says, Jose, what are you guys doing this weekend? I'm like, not much. He goes, I bought a jet ski. And I said, bought a jet ski? For what? Like, why? Right? I don't know. Just come down to the beach on the Columbia and just, I don't know, just, okay, we'll be there. Right? Now, I don't know how to swim to this day. Right? I don't know how to swim. And I don't even know really what a jet ski is. So we go to the Columbia. It was a Saturday. Now imagine this. It was a weird, funny moment in time. The jet ski is right there on the beach, you know, one jet ski. And there's 20 of us Mexicans sitting there looking at it. What do? I can't swim. Jose, don't worry, the life jacket. I'm like, that thing's going to keep me up? I don't know, right? Just, we didn't know what to do. Then finally, my brother showed us. And then maybe I jumped on. And just one at a time, we jumped on this thing, right? We loved it so much that our weekends and our activities were centered around this one jet ski. I'm talking a family of 30. To the point where we needed another jet ski. Right? We got another one. Now, one of the things you realize is that not everywhere you can jet ski, right? So Matt, good old friend Matt, Jose, you guys got to go to Lake Foster, Green Peter. He started naming all these places that I had never heard of either. Oh, you know what? If you really want to have a good time, you need to go camping in Lake Shasta. Shasta. I've never camped in my life. Why would camping matter to jet skiing? I don't understand. He convinced us to go. So imagine this, Matt, my brother, myself, and then my brother-in-law, 4 grown men, were going to go camping by ourselves. And we had families, right? He convinced us to take that jet ski to Lake Shasta, right? I packed my bag. I can still see the inside of my bag. I had a pair or two of shorts, a tank top. I had jeans. I've never been camping before. Had jeans, I almost dressed like this. I had no idea what camping even meant, what it looked like. I bought a tent, and we bought a tent and a sleeping bag. That was it. Nothing else, right? I quickly learned, those jeans were not going to come in handy when I was camping. You know? Now, if I could see Matt today, I don't know what I would do. Because you know what he led to? And Pat and George know this, our family, have a 15 to 20-year tradition of camping at Lake Shasta, renting a houseboat, jet skiing, camping. It changed our family's life here in the Northwest. One person pushed my brother to get a watercraft. But my daughter today, do you know what she asked me the other day? When are we going to go jet skiing? I mean, like, it's so part of our family now, right? That it's like I said, it's just changed our lives. We would have never been able to experience what this country had. I mean, this area, I just, something so simple, right? But it's changed our life. Now, this is not unique to me, but and back to the group, any examples, any doors that someone's opened that you can look back that have really changed your life? I mean, everybody must have one, but are there any examples? I'd like to learn.
Bobby?
Do you mean when it comes to appropriations? I mean, cultural appropriation?
No, just any changes. He's just asking if anybody has
okay.
experienced any particular person that has changed their.
Yeah, and I guess let me just explain something real quick, because one of the things I realized, and I heard this in one of your last talks, and it's sometimes when we talk about culture, we talk about the exotics, something outside of you, something outside of the general white stream, white life, like that's cultural, and we're the baseline, right? But from my point of view, baseball is something exotic, right? Camping, hiking, those are things that I'm not used to. We didn't grow up on this because it takes time, money, and expertise, you know, even the preparation from the Boy Scouts, you know, that preparation, it's a culture that's created here. It's here, right? So that's what I mean is like, you guys have a rich culture too, right? It's not the baseline, and it's not that mine is exotic or unique. It's just there's different varied levels of activities, that foods, music.
Sydney, you had a comment?
Well, I was just going to say my aunt, my father's sister married a Japanese man in the 50s. He was Nisei, which is first generation, and he served in the camps. But when I was 8, we lived in New Jersey and they lived in New York, and so much that he brought to our lives. I was introduced to sashimi and sushi when I was 9, and he would bring the fish from the city and cook, and sukiyaki and all these things, but also his experiences in the war, fighting in Italy, then he, in his church, he and my aunt brought folks from Nagasaki and Hiroshima to have plastic surgery in New York City. I met those people. And so those experiences led to me wanting to be a civil rights lawyer, which I was able to do, and also to be a pacifist in my life, because of those experiences with those folks that had been just literally melted. And so it just opened doors for me that I never I knew about them, their struggles of not being able to get a motel room together because of miscegenation laws in the South. So it was just this immense part of life and culture that I never would have known.
That's great, Sydney, because it does go both ways. And so it's a great example. Thank you. Anybody else feel compelled to talk?
We had a Japanese student who lived with us for a year when our sons were in high school. Our son was in high school, and he stayed with us here. And so after he went home, his family invited us to Japan and we've been there several times. And I don't know, on about the 4th visit, Hiro said, "Mom, Dad, I think it's time for you to visit Hiroshima." And it happened to be the anniversary of the day when we dropped the bomb. And it was very interesting because it wasn't a guided tour that we were on, but we were able to go through the city, ride the buses, and go to you've probably seen the column that was that was bombed, and it's kind of on leading to one side. That's still there. And it was a very emotional trip. And, and there were people looking at us with great interest as we walked around the city. It really brought that home. But as that anniversary day approaches every year, and as I hear people talk about the dropping of the bomb, I always think about that one day when our son took us there to visit.
Thanks for sharing, Fred. Oh, go ahead, David. Yes.
Oh, just quickly, my father-in-law is actually, his family's from Mexico, and he came to Kansas, and Dad worked on the railroad, et cetera, 11 brothers and sisters. None of them went to college, but he went to college, but he was a good athlete. And he went to the College of Emporia, and somebody, he doesn't know who, paid all his tuition for 4 years, still doesn't know who. And he ended up graduating, and he became a coach and a teacher in a high school, led him to state championships, was an umpire for American Legion Baseball for 25 years, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought of that when you said that. Just took one person, somebody believed him and said, hey, I want you to go to this college and I'll pay. And he still doesn't know to this day who it was that paid for his college. Changed his whole, changed my, so his whole family pretty much are not, we're not college graduates, all his brothers and sisters. But then my wife went on to get her master's degree in music and teaches piano at Western as a pianist. And her sister's got a PhD in psychology and So it just kind of spirals out from one person.
No, I mean, yeah, David, that was great. No, believe me, I love to hear those stories because that's real life, and actually, so that sort of transition, that's a great point to transition into sort of the professional side of what I do. And I'll spend like 15 minutes or so on that. And in this case, I'm talking about the real estate industry, and it's literally changed the trajectory of my family, right? Just the awareness, the knowledge, the financing, just land use, it's changed, completely changed. I came from restaurants. I worked at Arby's on Lancaster. There was another restaurant in Boston Market. I was there. And the story of how I became a realtor is a long story. So I'll save that for another day. But what I did want to share, going back to the example David shared, is that, and it's neat because I'm going to talk about a few people that are here today. I had quit real estate already. I had quit because I didn't realize you needed context. I didn't know you realized you needed people that were going to spend their money with you or trust you on. I didn't know all that. I just thought you get into the business and sell. I didn't know, right? So I first jumped into a Century 21 office. It didn't work out. They basically put my stuff in a box and told me to get out, and I was out. But then this fellow named Mario Contreras, he had started a little office named Tu Casa. And he's like, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. Because I told him, Mario, I'm out of the business. And he would say, don't worry, Jose, I'll help you. I'm like, no, Mario, it didn't work for me. I tried, right? 4 or 5 questions in, finally he says to me, Jose, I'll take you to, how about this? No commitment. Just, I'll treat you to lunch at Don Pedro's Taqueria on Lancaster. It had just opened. It was like my favorite place. And I thought to myself, well, I'll take that free lunch because I was hungry. But I was going to tell him no. It was just for the lunch. And now I realize there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, that's real to me. He convinced me to give it one more chance, to give that career one more try. Then maybe it wasn't me. And actually next month in March, it's been 24 years since that time. Here I am still, and now he wouldn't have been where he's at that moment if there weren't for 2 people, 2 very nice white fellers, They're here. I don't know if you want to say Pat and George. I mean, it's just, they're family to me. Now, they gave this fellow Mario an opportunity to launch his own little company out of his house on State Street. Old little house. Well, it wasn't that little, but it was, all the older houses are big. And two people helped him just enough for him to go out on his own and build his own dream of what he envisioned. He envisioned this for his life. He got that opportunity, and then he passed it along to me. And like I said, our little office at Ducasa is the 26th year. Right now, people will, you might say, well, it's just selling houses. Well, let me tell you something. So in 2007, I helped during the Obama campaign, the first one. And back then we were in Woodburn trying to figure out how do we reach Latino voters. We had no internet. I mean, there was no social media. It was very small, very little tools were actually available to target a certain segment. So one of the people there said, Jose, to the group, how about this? How about we just call the Marion County Assessor's Office, see if we can buy a list of every property owner with any Latino last name. So let's get every Garcia, every Gonzalez. We're just going to try something. Okay. So that list at that time, 2007, was 7,000 people in Marion County. Right. So now, when I saw the number 7,000, I realized, wait a minute, our little office has already helped people in the thousands now. I realized we made a difference. Because in this country, what's valued is entrepreneurship, home ownership, those kind of things. And we'll go a little bit into some of the unique challenges our office had, right? But if you could see the progression I saw within friends and family of, your transient, your seasonal workers, you go back and then all of a sudden you find a full-time job here, which pays just a little bit better. So you're like, well, maybe this year I won't go home back to Mexico because I can make a little more money and send more back. But the next thing you know, this young guy will get a girlfriend and then he'll have a kid. Now he can't go back, and it's just this progression. It was the same story that even today, it's still there. But for the first 5 or 10 years, whenever I got a call from somebody wanted to buy a house, it was literally the same conversation. And this is how it started, right? The mom would come in all excited, the kids are running around, but the dad would do this. So I focused on him, right? There's the barrier. He's, sales 101. And I would ask him, hey, it was more of a comment, but it was a question. But I said, congratulations on your decision to buy a house. It's great you got here. Because in my mind, I'm thinking maybe they feel stable enough to want to invest here. But I asked him, why? What was the deciding factor in you wanting to buy? And the dad literally, for word, would tell me that. I mean, I had this conversation 100 times. The same response, that he would do this. Well, Jose, I didn't think I was going to stay here. I only came to work. I miss home. But look at them, pointing to his kids. I can't leave anymore. What am I going to do? Take them to a land they don't know? Start over, right? That's why I tell people that if you really wanted people to start going back and forth between Mexico or at least back, give them residency. Because the first thing that people do when they get a permit to stay here is they leave back to Mexico to visit. That's another story. Now, actually, a question for everybody. What kind of unique challenges do you think I had or our office had in primarily serving people that are immigrant, Spanish speaking, sometimes documented, sometimes not? What kind of unique challenges our office you think confronted? And even to this day, like what kind of things are unique to me? What do you think? Any ideas out there? We're talking about housing, real estate, which is black and white.
Financing?
Yeah, redlining and financing.
I had any other comments?
Marty, did you have a comment? Martin?
I think Darla does.
Yes.
Just going, seconding the financing and then redlining. Were there neighborhoods where you couldn't show houses or?
You know, what's interesting is I tell the newer brokers that I was able to, at least I started in 97. I was able to still glimpse, I still had an experience of the way real estate was. Back then when I started, the guys at Century 21, still, actually the women too, they had the gold blazer. It was very formal. It was a really a culture industry that was really elevated, very professional, very serious, you know. But some of those things that you mentioned, all those things are true. Now, some of those things, of course, are against the law now, but the results of it are different. For example, I'm from Mount Angel. It was mentioned earlier. The first time I sold a house in Mount Angel, that realtor didn't want to give me the information. And I had to play this game of, his name was Jim. Actually, it was pretty neat because I ended up building a relationship with him. And he said, "Oh, you're newer." So we met and he goes, "I'm on my way out. You're on your way in. Let me tell you, let me share with you." So it ended up being a real good conversation, but it wasn't until he realized that I was also from Mount Angel and he knew my dad. So if it wasn't for that, because there was still a way to, at that time, control who bought or who had access to information, right? Now, the effects of redlining are obvious today. I mean, I don't know what the lines were here before, if they even were, because Oregon's history is it's crazy. It's unique, right? Especially with regards to real estate. But today, actually just yesterday, we have someone that's just starting with their office and she says, "Jose, I don't know about selling in Northeast." Ooh, man. And this is Northeast Salem. This is a Latina lady. And I had to have a good talk with her about where maybe because she's new to Salem. I had to talk to her. Where did that come from? Where did that come from that it had to come out of your mouth that way? And we talked for about half an hour just about some of the things that are the result of some of these things, right? We're dealing with some of the results, but financing, we had lenders we had people that work farm labor and they work different canneries, farms, and lenders didn't want to deal with all those W-2s and pay stubs. They just didn't want to deal with it. We had to translate everything. We had to be there to translate for the banking info, the inspection, the closing. And guess when anything went wrong, guess who they blamed? The only person that they had seen. They thought I did everything. Jose was the inspector, the realtor, the loan officer. They didn't know because it was always me providing the information, me along with some of our staff. But let me give you some of the exacts. I don't know if I ever told Pat and George this, but the very first time I went to a realtor meeting in Salem, it was the last time I went for about 10 years because the first thing I get there and I'm standing there and someone says, "Oh, can you get me a water?" Yeah. And then I go, "Oh," and it was just, I didn't expect that at all. So it was like a slap, like, oh, so I had to recover for a second. I didn't even know what to say, but I'm like, "Oh, no. I'm a realtor." Cause I was also 21. So I was immigrant, I was Latino, right. So and then I looked down at what I was wearing. I'm like, I'm wearing a white shirt and black pants. Well, shoot, I do look like a waiter, but another, banks, it was interesting. Let me tell you something funny that always happened. When we get to the banking portion, the loan officers would ask me to ask them, "Jose, can you give me what bank? Where do they bank at? Where is their money at?" And I'd be like, since I already had the conversation with them, I'm like, "Well, Jerry, they don't have a bank account." What? Why wouldn't they have a bank account? "Oh, because they don't trust banks." And they would laugh and laugh. And I just always think, why is that funny? I just never understood why it was funny. But it wasn't until 2007 when the economy was crashing. And in Los Angeles, IndyMac Bank closed its doors to people, and there was a line of people out the door demanding their money. Then I'm like, that's why. These people have been through that.
Right.
They've been robbed by the institutions that they trusted. It's just this country hadn't gone through that. That's why they store their money at home. To this day, people are still wary about putting their money in the bank. To this day, these same clients of ours, we have to educate them. You know, a high percentage of our clients don't work office jobs. They don't have the liberty to take a day off. I mean, it's been a blessing. The fact that I've been able to help so many people become homeowners. It has been. And, you know, it just hasn't been easy. Now, it's funny. So now, how does this matter to you? There's just two quick stories. One of them is Hector. He's an immigrant landscaper, has a side business. He works a full-time job, landscaper. He bought his first house with us a few years ago. A year or so ago, he comes to me, Jose, I want to buy another house. I want to be an investor one day. I read these books about investing, and he's telling me all this in Spanish. And I said, Hector, we can do it. Don't worry. Well, as he was cleaning up a house for a fellow off Bush Park, Hector's sharing his story. Hey, this is what my goals are. And you know what this guy did? He says, Hector, wait, you're interested in buying? Yep. Buy my house here. What? I'll give you a great deal. And he ended up calling me, and I sort of helped him through the paperwork process. And I said, Hector, do you realize? I looked at the amount, and I looked up the address. I go, Hector, he's selling it to you at a deep discount. And he says, Jose, I know. He told me that himself. He said, Jose, he said, Hector, I'm going to give you a good deal because I see what you're trying to do in your life. I've already experienced that, so I'm going to do my little part to help you. And he literally gave away $100,000 in equity to Hector. He knew that. 100,000. It was real. I saw it. This was just last year. You can't even measure how Hector feels. The pride he has. Because it came true. You know, and I'll second that story because
Jose, I can see that this is very emotional to you. And I'm sitting here listening to this, and I wish it was that way to all marginalized cultures. And I wish we could see that for other people that have been through so much, so wrongfully. And you've been talking about how the 1 degree change and how it only takes one to change and to help others lift up, hand up, lift them up and support them. And,
thanks,
and you are now that 1 degree change for others. You're talking about, and you're lauding all the wonderful people in your life, from your mom to Pat and George, and to all the people around you that have done so much for you. And now you're giving back. And I can see that it's your wish as it is mine, and probably everybody in this tonight, that we want this for everybody.
Thanks, Lori. And believe me, I'm always going to share exactly how I feel. I don't mind getting emotional in front of people because this is real, you know, and it's a real impact. And really the second example was Pat and George here. They don't, you know, luckily they're at a level that they can see what they've done to help me personally. But almost the exact same story happened. And just last year, you know, what they've done is they were just real quickly, as we were getting priced out of an official office location, they said, we'll buy something and rent it to you. And years they held on through the tough times. They helped us. They never raised the rent on us. It was just the patience they had with something that they earned through 30 to 40 years of hard work, right? They were able to find it within themselves to pass it forward. And last year, Pat and George gave us the opportunity to buy back the office, in my opinion, underpriced, at a great deal with terms that nobody would have, I don't know if anybody would have given to us, right? So now our little business now owns our own little office, right? And so it's just, they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
They didn't, but they did. And it's something I appreciate. I'm going to acknowledge publicly here. And luckily they're here. I didn't know they're going to be here. So to me, I'm excited that they're here, right? But I'm telling you guys real stories, real examples, right? And none of this I made up. This isn't something I learned in a book, you know, so thank you. You know, now the last part, which really only have about 10 minutes. I wasn't going to talk about politics, but I see that this is somewhere where you're thinking about taking action, city council, school board. You know, I'm not going to share too much about my race because that story is still being written, you know, and but I did want to share some insights because you guys a lot of you might come into it from a different point of view, a different angle. You know, let's do this. Raise of hands. Who here is hoping to encourage people of color to run for local office? Like, who's here would love to see that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Now, who here is okay or hoping that that person, a person of color, what if they happen to be conservative, Republican, would the same amount of hands go up?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think it would.
Who is hesitating and why do you think?
Why are you hesitating?
It depends right now, by the way things are going, and it depends on your definition now of conservative and Republican.
Yes.
I would say pretty much the same. The Republican Party has changed, and I would not encourage anybody to be a part of the current party the way that it's going. I think it may become extinct. So I would just not encourage anybody to do that, and I would not support anyone because that the party as it is now does not share any of my values.
Content of character means a lot to me. I've lived in Oregon since 1964, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, but all my political heroes are Oregon Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
People who are fiscally conservative and liked people and cared about people. Hatfield, Tom McCall, the list goes on and on and on. And like the dinosaurs, they're all extinct.
Yeah. Jose, I'd like to say something on this. I was in the legislature for 15 years, and I was in the House of Representatives for 4 years and the Senate for 11. I'm a liberal Democrat, although I was elected in Klamath County. I was the last Democrat elected in Klamath County. I worked with Mark Hatfield and Tom McCall. Tom McCall was governor during part of the time that I was in office. I was in Governor Atia's cabinet. I think he's one of the greatest Oregonians that I served with. He was a great governor. I somebody said the party has changed. I used to be a Republican. And all of my formative years as a teenager, I was the chair of the youth for Eisenhower and the Young Republicans and all of that.
Mhm.
And the times changed. And so, you know, I think philosophy does come into it. And I don't think we can step aside from that fact. But you know, we have some great Oregonians who were Republicans when they served, and that's where I am today.
One thing, I don't know if this is the point you're making, but even listening to you for this whole hour, you know, all your stories are human stories.
Yeah.
And we all relate. We all have human stories. We all have people who have helped us along the way, all of these things. And so in a sense, you're asking if we can, you know, sometimes we assume that people of color are automatically going to be progressives or something. And so you're kind of asking, well, what happens if they aren't? And we have to know that there's people of color who are conservative and so forth. And so we have to, you know that. And so like, who was it that said content of character is what you're looking for. And so I really appreciate what you've said, because it does make us, it brought a human face to everything. And that's what it's important. And so, yeah, I wouldn't have a problem voting or trying to help somebody either way, you know, if the content of character.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, one of the terms I heard, I hear this not just here, I think I heard it in one of your past conversations, but I've heard it, is sometimes people will say, well, can you believe that there's Latinos that are pro-Trump, or Black men that are pro-Trump? You know, like, it's unbelievable, you know, and I'm like, no. Believe it. Saying it's unbelievable sort of like dismisses it. It, I don't know. It's something I think has to be, you know, just something for you to think about. We're not solving the world here today. But the reason I'm telling you this is that now, one of the things we started a nonprofit named the Latino Business Alliance. It was really just set up to help small Latino business owners here in the Valley. It's been 11 years now. And we're nonpartisan because, you know, it's a 501c3. We can't do any political action. So it's been, the requests that have come to us have been from all political sides. And we have to treat everybody different. But what that's allowed in someone like me is I've seen conversations that I would have never thought had we as an LBA, as a group, said no. We've had some very difficult conversations. And then what I realized is even that person that maybe you might not agree with, you know, they don't at this time, they don't have a place to share safely, right? Mm-hmm. One thing that I can tell you though, and this is something that, you know what, I'll give you a real example. I mean, I'll do a real quick one. So there was we built a relationship with the Salem Chamber of Commerce. A fellow named Jason Brandt had just become the CEO of it. I happened to meet him in 2002 or 3. He was just starting there. And then for him to be the director 15 years later, there was a vote coming, and it was a driver's license issue here in Oregon, right? And it was 2016, I think, 14, 15. And it was the first time that that this group had helped overturn it. So we had to vote to keep the driver's licenses for everybody, right? So the polls were saying it was a losing cause, and it lost by 70 to 30% here in Oregon. It lost, right? But at that time, I had seen a notice for the Salem Chamber of their public policy meeting was coming up that week. It was a Thursday, and I said, and they're going to decide ballot measures and who the candidate was. And I'm like, shoot, they're going to put the driver's license thing on the table there, right? And at that time, the LBA was trying to create a relationship with the chamber, because our small business owners, they're trying to get their footing in this country. Mm-hmm. And we were looking for ways to work together, right? But I knew that if the Salem Chamber was going to put that on the ballot, I knew how the vote would go. At that time, with that publicity policy, I knew it. It would be voted, vote against it or into the negative to help hurt the Latino community at that time. That's how the thing was laying out.
Oh, yeah.
So I reached out to Jason Brandt. Jason, we trust each other. You know me and I know you, and we're working on something big here between our alliances. I'm going to ask you for a favor. At the public policy meeting, Measure 88 is going to come up. And Jason, I know how it's going to get voted. I know. I'm going to ask you for a favor. Can you please just not put it on the table? Long silence. Jose, done. Right. That ballot measure, I mean, they were about to send out thousands of mailers with their recommendations, right? And obviously it was a win for us that they didn't spread that any further. And that was only built, the only reason that happened is because the time I had taken in rooms and meetings with people that nobody would think in other words, Jose, don't hang around those people. Don't be seen with those people. Hard concern. I'm like, people were trying to protect me, right? But they don't know, they don't remember who I am, right? But I'm able to go into those meetings and I realized this, that I would rather there be people of color, especially those times Latino people, the conservative ones, in those rooms when I'm not there, to be able to share some of the differences and uniquenesses that come with some of these issues. Without their voice, we know how it's going to be voted. So I hear you. I'm a Democrat. I mean, I'm liberal, right? But what happened to me on my city council race, right? I don't want to happen to the next generation of people of color to run.
Exactly.
I don't want that. There was a fellow named Greg Peterson running for city council, dismissed in Salem a couple years ago. I mean, I can go, there's other voices that are being, because now it's not necessarily the fact you're a person of color. People are like, wait a minute, we need to agree politically first. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is, as you're going out there taking action, just be honest with the efforts you're doing. Is it people of color or just these group of people of color? And I say that because the message I heard was, we need a representative for Northeast Salem. It's been long, 20, 30 years, or we need somebody. And then when I show up, they're like, well, maybe not you. You're not the right one.
Yeah.
And I won anyways.
Good.
And on that note, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Greg. We're getting close to 6:30, and what a note to end it on.
Yeah.
We're so glad you won, Jose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jose. You are a provocative, authentic presenter, and you're real. You showed real good emotion. It spread throughout our group, which is totally fine. But you've left us with lots to think about. So I just thank you again, and perhaps we can have you back at another future time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gregory. I'm available. Feel free to share my contact info. I love these conversations. Thank you all for doing this.
And next
My
week,
pleasure.
thank you, Jose. And next week, our topic will be white apathy. And so between now and then, why don't you think of that word apathy and think what it means to you? And it's okay if you look in the dictionary too, to get some ideas on it. As I listen to Jose, one of the things we're going to be talking about in the spring, we're going to be talking about some action things, and we're working on developing some of these thoughts. But I kind of like sometimes as an old teacher to say, what if, or let's dream together. And so I want to throw a what if out that you might be thinking about, and I'm sure we'll revisit it along the way. What if in the Salem-Kaiser School District, beginning in kindergarten, we started saying we're going to begin with kindergarten and the next year go up to the first grade, second grade. And by the time we get through with the 12th grade, our students are going to be bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
We did that. You know, we can do that.
Yeah.
That's what school boards are about.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's think about that. And I was principal for about a year at the Falls City Grammar School. And there were some changes that we wanted to make. And we decided, we could say for the juniors in high school, we're going to do this. But the superintendent and I agreed, we'll start with kindergarten and we'll work our way up. And that's what we did. And it worked. And so let's think about that. So bring a friend with you next week. You all know how to get here. You know what the price of admission is. And so come back and do bring a friend with you. And hey, Yvette, down in Texas, there must be some friends down there that you can bring along with you. And we're so happy to have you all here tonight. Bless you all and have a good week.
Jose, stick around for just a few minutes, okay?
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Mhm.